This conference will now be recorded.
Hey, everybody. It's 2:30 on Thursday. It is time for our Monday through Thursday 2:30 podcast. This is the podcast where you will hear the science about what actually happened to people during this opioid crisis. And for those of you who've been following us, you know I'm writing the book. I'll be finished with the first draft the next 10 days. Good possibility. Feeling pretty good about it. And as I'm going through the book, and as we know, the purpose of the book is not only to educate people, but to raise the first amount of money to be used to file the first mass tort lawsuits. In fact, those people who want to be the pathfinders, the lamplighters, those who file, those who take the first steps for revenge against these companies for what they did, help us sell 25 books, and you have the option of being the person in the mass tort lawsuit. I think that's a fair way to do it. There are people out there who want revenge. They want to see these companies brought to justice, and this is a great pathway to do so. But as I'm going through the book, and I'm going through as I'm writing the book, and as I'm going through the studies, line by line, word by word. One of the things that jumped out at me, and it really hadn't jumped out at me previously. I've gone through the studies many, many times, but every time you go through a study, you find something new. And what jumped out at me, and it really had an impact on me, like on the study that's in front of you. Okay, some drugs have side effects, and there's a chance you might get the side effect. Okay, this wasn't a side effect. You look at these studies, 100% of the people got genetic damage. 100% of the people developed symptoms. That's not a side effect. That's a consequence. Our people never had a chance. They never had a chance. They literally never had a chance. This wasn't a side effect. A side effect means that you got a possibility of getting something. This was 100% guaranteed, which means that's the scientific evidence that the pharmaceutical companies and the psychiatrists ignored. They ignored the fact that 100% of you would develop genetic damage and a profound sickness secondary to the genetic damage. 100%. Okay, some of you didn't get genetic damage. All of you did. Every dose of the opioid causes genetic damage. You get enough genetic damage, and then when you try to stop taking the opioids, you manifest the signature disease, the sickness. Why it happens when you try to stop taking the opioids implies that the opioid receptor is altered in some way, damaged in some way, different in some way, and it's damaged in such a way that when you have an opioid hanging around, it works somewhat normally, but when there's no opioid hanging around, it doesn't work normal at all. It'll be a structural thing. That's what this will come down to. But this is pure product liability. Okay, and for the pharmaceutical companies and the psychiatrists, you don't have a leg to stand on. Okay, this scientific evidence was overwhelming, and it showed that 100% of the people got sick. Not 5% or 6% or 8%. No, 100% of the people got sick. That's what the scientific evidence said in 1990. You approved OxyContin in 1995, and yet in 1990 you had the Dell study, which showed that 100% of the subjects that went into opioid withdrawal developed adrenaline toxicity, epinephrine toxicity. Okay, that was 1990. Chang replicated the study in 1990. Okay, the science was very clear in 1990. 100% of people in opioid withdrawal showed adrenaline toxicity. Okay, which is deadly. Okay, how in the world did you get past that and get OxyContin approved in 1995? That's the big question. That's the big mystery. How did you get OxyContin approved 5 years after both the Dell study and the Chang study were published? Okay, the only answer I can come up with, maybe it's right, maybe it's not, but the only answer that I can come up with is in 1992, NIH, National Institute of Health, gave control of all opioid research funding over to NIDA, NIDA, National Institute of Drug Abuse. And NIDA is just ground zero for the dog food. Okay, I have dogs. No offense, dogs. Don't get upset by the use of the term dog food. NIDA doesn't actually make dog food. I'm using dog food to say that they put out fake science. I guess when the dogs are around, I should use another word. But NIDA was ground zero for the dog food that was opioid addiction, opioid use disorder. NIDA is ground zero for this ridiculous theory of the dopamine theory of addiction for the opioids. I don't know, it might be true for, cocaine, amphetamines, other stuff. I don't know. And NIDA is ground zero for the brain disease model of addiction. Okay, which is just garbage. They're just pushing dog food. It's just absolute garbage. Okay. But I'm thinking that when they got control of the funding in 1992, the pharmaceutical companies were able to change the dialogue away from the adrenaline toxicity and change the dialogue over to that this was a opioid use disorder, opioid addiction, a mental health issue, and that's how they got OxyContin approved. It's not the drug's fault; it's the person's fault. Let's blame the victim. But that's the real question here, and that's a hard one to answer. Is the Dell study of 1990, the Chang study of 1990? These studies showed that everybody in withdrawal showed adrenaline toxicity. That should have been the end of the opioids right there. How can you approve a drug that 100% guarantees you're going to have a neurotoxicity, a major dysfunction in your nervous system? Okay, how can you approve that drug? Okay, but lo and behold, they got it done in 1995, 5 years after Dell and Chang were published. They got OxyContin approved. The other thing that happened in there, and this is interesting, was in 1994. Johnson & Johnson successfully genetically modified the poppy flower to make no morphine and only make thebane. The name of the project was called Norman. The reason they did this was to get around the international treaties that limited the amount of morphine that could be made worldwide. Okay, so they genetically modified the poppy plant so that it made no morphine. All the treaties were based on the weight of morphine, and they developed a poppy flower that made thebane, which was not included in the treaties. Okay, there were no limits on thebane at all. Okay, and so now they end up with a warehouse full of thebane in Tasmania off of Australia. Okay, and they gotta find a market. Okay, what are we going to do with this thebane? Well, thebane is very easily converted into, guess what? Oxycodone. Okay, but you got a warehouse full of thebane. So, Percocet at 2.5 milligrams, or Percocet at 5 milligrams, or Percocet at 10 milligrams, ain't going to burn through a warehouse full of oxycodone. Okay, lo and behold, here comes OxyContin, which is based on oxycodone, okay, which can be made from the thebane. And look at the size of the tablets. Okay, 10s, 20s, 40s, 80s, even for a brief period, 160 milligrams. Okay, now we can burn through a warehouse full of thebane. Now we can make some real money. Okay, and that was in 1994. So Dell and Chang studies were in 1990. OxyContin was approved in 1995. Some interesting things happened in the 5 years in between. Okay, somehow and against all scientific evidence, the conversation got turned to a mental health conversation. Okay, that's the power of money, and somehow, we get this. Well, we know how Johnson & Johnson. We get this warehouse of thebane, which became a warehouse of oxycodone, and Johnson & Johnson signed a deal with to be the sole supplier for, or at least the main supplier for Purdue Pharma for OxyContin. We wouldn't know this if it wasn't for the Attorney General of Oklahoma that actually got Johnson & Johnson on the witness stand for 5 days. And boy, did he have the right list of questions. He did a great job with that. Wouldn't mind getting him involved with us. Well, gang, it's Thursday. That ends our podcast this week. I can't tell you guys how much I really look forward to and do enjoy these podcasts. I hope you enjoy them also. Trying hard to make the podcast meaningful, trying hard to make the book meaningful, trying hard to see justice, or I'm comfortable with the word revenge, to see revenge against these pharmaceutical companies and these psychiatrists for what they did. Remember, it was a 1-2 punch. The pharmaceutical companies failed to warn, and then when the sickness happened, the psychiatrists come out with some fairy tale ridiculous concept of opioid addiction. It was a 1-2 punch for our people. And the scientific literature very clearly showed that 100% of the people were going to be sick. Our people never had a chance. The odds were stacked against them. All right, let's hold here. Don't forget to like and subscribe us. Don't forget to post this podcast on your social media and everybody else's social media. If you're interested in being a lamplighter, a pathfinder, and being one of the first ones to file a mass tort lawsuit, get in touch with me. We're going to ask you to help us sell 25 copies of the book, and then you don't have to pay anything for your lawsuit. That will cover the cost of your lawsuit, and we'll get it filed. We're ready to file now. We just got to get some books sold and get some money raised, and we look forward to getting these mass tort lawsuits filed. So let me hear from you. Other than that, have a great weekend, and we'll see everybody next week. Bye-bye.